During my overseas deployment in service to my nation, my spouse, without my knowledge, persuaded my elderly mother to modify our family trust. My name is Sergeant Major Thomas Miller, 38 years old, and I've dedicated 18 years of my life to the United States Army Signal Corps. I spent the preceding 10 months at a forward operating base in a far-flung region, diligently managing intelligence transmissions and longing for the familiar comfort of my home state's verdant landscapes. 3 days after my return to my hometown of Springfield, I discovered the documents hidden within my mother's writing desk. The family trust, meticulously established by my late father, had undergone significant alterations. Not merely adjustments, but a complete overhaul. My wife, Deborah, my partner of 9 years, had been designated the primary trustee, while my mother, Eleanor, had been relegated to secondary beneficiary status. The date on the document coincided with the 4th month of my deployment. I sat in my childhood home study, painstakingly reviewing each line of the legal paperwork, twice over. This house has been in the family for 4 generations. The property, encompassing 20 acres of breathtaking Kentucky countryside, was intended to remain within the family's possession perpetually. This was my father's unwavering wish. "Everything all right in here, Thomas?" Deborah stood in the doorway, casually leaning against the frame, her blonde hair neatly pulled back, adorned with the diamond earrings I'd gifted her for our recent anniversary. I quickly placed the documents back into their folder. "Just reviewing some paperwork," I replied. "Your mother's finances were a complete mess," she remarked, her tone light and reassuring. "I organized everything while you were away. Someone had to take charge." I nodded, my throat feeling constricted. "I've been diligently managing all her bills, handling the property taxes," Deborah continued. "The trust required updating." Your mother wholeheartedly concurred. My mother, 85 years of age and increasingly prone to memory lapses, sat in the living room, engrossed in a television game show at an excessive volume. During our recent video calls from overseas, she had exhibited moments of confusion regarding the date. "Thank you for your diligence," I acknowledged, relieved. "Of course, take all the time you need to settle back in," she smiled. That evening, long after Deborah had retired to bed, I sat on the back porch, observing the silhouettes of ancient oak trees against the night sky, pondering my father's actions. A decorated military officer himself, he had instilled in me the understanding that outward displays of dominance rarely equate to true strength. The following morning, I kissed Deborah goodbye as she departed for her role at Summit Financial. I informed her of my plan to spend the day with my mother. She remained unaware of my act of discreetly placing the trust documents in my jacket pocket. I first met Deborah 10 years ago at a coffee shop near Fort Riley. During my assignment there, she possessed remarkable intelligence, ambition, and an innate ability to make others feel valued. We married within a year. She established a strong rapport with my mother from the outset. A blessing, especially following my father's passing 6 years prior. My father had been the responsible one, the meticulous planner. Upon receiving his lung cancer diagnosis, he ensured everything was in perfect order. "Take care of your mother," he'd instructed on his final day. "The house and land remain within the family. That's non-negotiable." The trust he established appeared to be unassailable, or so I initially believed. For years, Deborah had expressed dissatisfaction with residing in a rented property while possessing ample land at my mother's residence. She repeatedly suggested building our own home there, a proposition I consistently rejected. The property was designated for my mother's peaceful retirement. My deployments had become more frequent over the past 4 years. With each return, I observed subtle changes. My mother appeared increasingly reliant on Deborah. My wife had assumed control of my mother's finances, medication schedule, and doctor's appointments. "She's becoming forgetful," Deborah would explain. "She needs assistance, Thomas." This explanation seemed reasonable, until it didn't. On my second day back home, I took my mother to lunch, just the two of us. We dined at the Bluebird, a quaint diner she and my father used to frequent every Sunday after church. "How are you truly doing, Mom?" I asked after we placed our orders. She smiled, her hands exhibiting a slight tremor as she took a sip of water. "You know, just getting by. Deborah has been incredibly helpful." "I've noticed the trust was altered," I stated, maintaining a calm demeanor. She looked perplexed.
Was it the documents you signed several months ago concerning the house and property?
Mom furrowed her brow. "Deborah presents me with numerous papers to sign, bills and things."
She explains them, but she trailed off.
I get confused sometimes.
My stomach tightened. What kind of papers?
Insurance, bank documents.
She says it's to safeguard the assets while you're away, that you'd want her to manage the finances. Mom leaned forward. Concern etched on her face.
Did I do something wrong, Cameron?
I reached across the table and gently covered her hand with mine. No, Mom, you haven't done anything wrong. On the drive home, Mom fell asleep. I immediately contacted an old Army comrade, now a practicing attorney. I cautiously explained the situation. Don't confront her yet, he advised. We need to ascertain the extent of this. 3 days later, I discovered the bank statements. I wasn't actively searching for them. I was assisting my mother in organizing old photographs when she mentioned wanting to show me a positive bank statement Deborah had brought over. What statement is that, Mom? I asked. From the bank, she replied, adding, the investments are doing well. $90,000 withdrawn over the past 7 months, in increments ranging from $6,000 to $18,000. The withdrawal slips all bore my mother's shaky signature. I sat on the bed's edge, surrounded by the incriminating papers. This wasn't mere opportunism, it was calculated, deliberate. My mother stood in the doorway, observing me with worried eyes. Are the numbers favorable? She inquired. Deborah says not to worry about the specifics. I carefully gathered the statements and smiled reassuringly. Everything's fine, Mom. I'm just catching up. That evening, Deborah suggested a celebratory dinner to mark my return. We dined at a high-end restaurant downtown, where she ordered expensive champagne. She wore a new dress and ostentatious jewelry. You seem distracted, she remarked, reaching across the table to touch my hand. Still adjusting, I nodded. Just finding my bearings. I've been considering, she continued, her eyes gleaming with excitement. Now that you're home, we should discuss building on your mother's land. I've already consulted with an architect. It's still in the preliminary stages. I took a sip of water. And what will happen to Mom? We'll care for her, naturally, but that house is too large for her now. There's an exceptional assisted living community near my office. Very exclusive. In that instant, I understood. The trust, the accounts, the land, it was all part of a meticulously planned scheme. She'd been plotting this for years, patiently awaiting the opportune moment when I was deployed, and my mother was at her most vulnerable. I didn't confront her. I didn't raise my voice. I smiled and nodded appropriately, as she enthusiastically detailed her vision for our future home on my family's land. I think I need a few weeks to decompress, I stated, to fully transition back into civilian life, before making significant decisions. She appeared disappointed but nodded. Of course. Take your time. I excused myself to the restroom, and discreetly called my attorney friend. I need everything you have on elder financial abuse and trust invalidations, I whispered, and I need it immediately. Returning to the table, a strange calm settled over me. The weight of betrayal was immense, but clarity sharpened my focus. A week after my discovery, I scheduled a consultation with Arthur Reeves, an estate attorney in Louisville, specializing in elder law. I drove the 60 miles alone, telling Deborah I was meeting with former Army colleagues. Your mother was likely coerced, Arthur stated after examining the documents. His office, lined with legal texts, exuded the aroma of leather and wood polish. However, proving it won't be straightforward. Did she undergo any cognitive assessment around the time these documents were signed? Not that I'm aware of. I leaned forward. But she's been increasingly forgetful. Names, dates. She repeats questions. Arthur nodded. We'll require a geriatric specialist to evaluate her current condition. If she's exhibiting signs of cognitive decline now, we can argue it was present when she signed. I left with a strategic plan. The next day I took my mother to Dr. Sir Miguel Carter, who confirmed my suspicions. Early-stage dementia, likely developing for at least a year or more. Has anyone else observed these symptoms? Dr. Carter inquired. My wife, I replied. She's been managing my mother's affairs during my deployment. Dr. Carter frowned slightly. And she never sought a medical evaluation. Apparently not. Armed with medical documentation, I decided to directly confront Deborah, not with accusations, but with questions. She sat in the kitchen that evening, after my mother had retired. I took Mom to see a specialist today. I began. She's exhibiting signs of dementia. Deborah's expression subtly shifted. That's dreadful, but not surprising. I've noticed memory issues for some time. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Before or after she signed the trust amendment. Just trying to establish a timeline, I said, maintaining a calm tone. For the doctors. I've done nothing but help your mother while you were gone, she retorted. her voice rising slightly. Who do you think has been here day after day? Certainly not you. I nodded. You're right. And I appreciate everything you've done. I'm just concerned about some financial decisions that were made.
What financial decisions?
Her tone sharpened. The trust amendments, the new joint accounts, the withdrawals, those were for your mother's care, she snapped.
And household expenses. Everything is documented. I'd like to see those documents.
Deborah abruptly stood.
I don't appreciate being interrogated, Thomas. Not after everything I've sacrificed.
Your mother agreed to all of it, a woman with dementia. I stated quietly. She wasn't diagnosed then. Deborah grabbed her keys.
I need some air. We'll discuss this when you're thinking more clearly.
She slammed the door behind her. I sat alone for a long time. The next morning I received a call from my bank. There had been an attempted access to my personal savings account, an account in which Deborah had no access. The attempt failed due to incorrect password entries. That afternoon I received a certified letter addressed to my mother. It was from Meadowbrook Assisted Living confirming her upcoming residency. The move-in date was scheduled for the following month. The contract bore my mother's signature, dated 3 days after my return home. When I showed my mother the letter, she looked bewildered. I don't recall this place. Did I agree to move? Deborah says you did, I replied, observing her face. She slowly shook her head. I don't want to leave my home, Thomas. I promised your father I'd stay here. That night I changed all my account passwords and placed a security freeze on my credit. Then I contacted Arthur Reeves. It's worse than we thought, I told him. And I believe she knows I'm on to her. 2 days later I drove to the county clerk's office. I needed to review the original trust amendment, not the copy Deborah possessed, but the official recorded document. The clerk, a kindly woman named Margaret, retrieved the file for me. Miller Family Trust, she confirmed, sliding the folder across the counter. I opened it and noticed something chilling. The notary stamp. The document had been notarized by someone named Amelia Carter. Do you know this notary? I asked Margaret. She adjusted her glasses and examined the stamp. Amelia, certainly. She's worked at the Sterling Law Office for years. Sterling Law, the same firm where Deborah's college roommate, Samantha Sterling, was a partner. A connection Deborah had never revealed when discussing the trust modifications. I thanked Margaret and immediately drove to Sterling Law. The receptionist informed me that Samantha was in court, but I could speak with her associate, Amelia Carter. Amelia appeared visibly nervous upon my introduction. You're Deborah's husband, she stated, avoiding eye contact. Is there something I can help you with? You're inquiring about a trust amendment for your mother, 6 months ago. She nodded. I did. Everything appeared to be in order. Was my mother alone when she signed the document? Amelia hesitated. I don't specifically recall. Let me assist your recollection. I said quietly. Was my wife present during the signing? I really can't discuss. My mother has dementia. Amelia. Documented dementia. The amendment stripped her of primary control over assets she's held for decades, and somehow it all transpired while I was deployed overseas. Her face paled. Mr. Miller, I think you should speak with Samantha about this. I intend to, but first, I'd like to know if you actually witnessed my mother sign those papers, or if you merely notarized a document Deborah presented to you. She abruptly stood. I think this conversation is concluded. That evening, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. It was Samantha Sterling. Thomas, she said. Her voice strained. We need to talk. We met at a secluded cafe. Samantha looked impeccably dressed in her business attire, but her eyes reflected distress. Amelia informed me of your visit, she began. I want to assure you that our firm adheres rigorously to notary standards. Did your firm draft the trust amendment? I asked. She sighed. No. Deborah brought the document already prepared. She claimed it had been drafted by your family's attorney, with your knowledge. And my mother? Was she present when it was notarized? Samantha looked down at her coffee. No. Deborah explained that your mother was ill and unable to attend. Amelia notarized it based on Deborah's assurance that your mother had signed willingly. That's illegal, I stated flatly. It is. Samantha met my gaze. I've already contacted the State Bar Association to self-report the violation. Amelia has been suspended pending an investigation. Why are you telling me this? Because I've known Deborah since college. And I never anticipated we both trailed off. There's more, Thomas. Last year she inquired about liquidating property assets and transferring funds offshore. I assumed it was for a client of her financial firm. Now I'm not so sure. My mind raced. Offshore accounts. Property liquidation. The assisted living contract. How long had she been planning this? Vanessa hesitated. There's one more thing you should know. 3 years ago, Deborah consulted me about divorce proceedings. She wanted to know how military pensions and benefits were divided, whether deployments impacted spousal support calculations. The revelation struck me like a physical blow. 3 years ago, coinciding with the intensification of my deployment schedule. Thank you for your honesty, I said. Leaving the cafe, I called Arthur Reeves. I need to act swiftly, I informed him. She's been working on this for years. I didn't confront Deborah with my new knowledge. Instead, I maintained a pleasant demeanor during dinner that night as she discussed renovations for the house. I listened as she suggested selling part of the land to fund Mom's care. I nodded when she mentioned meeting with a financial advisor to streamline our investments. Meanwhile, I diligently built my case. Dr. Carter provided a comprehensive report on my mother's cognitive state, including her professional assessment that the symptoms had been present for at least 18 months. Arthur Reeves filed emergency motions to freeze all assets within the trust and the joint accounts Deborah had established. I hired a private investigator who documented Deborah's spending habits, the designer clothing, the lavish lunches with real estate developers, the meetings with a luxury home builder. He also uncovered something unexpected, a separate apartment in Lexington, leased 6 months prior under her maiden name, Garcia. 10 days into my investigation, Arthur called with news. The judge has granted our request for temporary guardianship of your mother, he announced. And we've secured a hearing date for next week, to contest the trust amendment. That day, I moved my belongings from the master bedroom to the guest room. When Deborah questioned me, I blamed sleep disturbances resulting from my deployment. I toss and turn too much, I explained. Don't want to disturb you. The truth was I couldn't bear sleeping beside her any longer. 3 days before the hearing, I received a package from the private investigator. Inside was a flash drive containing financial records Deborah had attempted to delete from her laptop. Records showing transfers from my mother's accounts to pay off Deborah's personal credit card debt. Over $50,000 in 7 months. That evening, Deborah approached me in the kitchen. We need to talk about your mother, she stated, her voice gentle yet firm. The assisted living facility requires an answer by Friday. I looked up from my coffee. I'm not certain that's the right course of action for her. Deborah sighed dramatically. Thomas, be realistic. She can't live alone anymore, and we can't adequately care for someone with dementia. We've managed thus far. That's because I've handled everything, she retorted, irritation creeping into her voice. But it's unsustainable. The facility is excellent, and the trust will cover the expenses. The trust, I repeated. The one you had her sign while I was deployed. A flicker of something, weariness, perhaps, crossed her eyes. Then it vanished, replaced by practiced concern. I did what was necessary. Someone had to step up and make these decisions. I appreciate that, I said, maintaining a neutral tone, but I'd like to explore other options before moving her. Deborah's smile tightened. The deposit is non-refundable after Friday. You made a deposit already. Of course. Good places have waiting lists. I deposited $15,000 to secure her spot, from my account, not ours. Don't worry. I nodded, mentally noting this new information. Let me consider it overnight. The next morning, I visited the assisted living facility myself. The director confirmed the deposit but seemed confused when I inquired about the waiting list. We don't currently have a waiting list, she informed me. We have several units immediately available. When I asked about the deposit amount, she checked her records. It shows $5,000 here, she stated, paid by Deborah Garcia. Approximately $10,000 are unaccounted for. Another piece of the puzzle. That afternoon, I finalized the remaining details with Arthur. All evidence was compiled. All paperwork was filed. The forensic accountant had concluded her analysis of the financial records. Tomorrow was the hearing. I hadn't informed Deborah. She would learn about it when the sheriff's deputy served her with the documents in the morning. That night, I sat on the back porch again, gazing at the old oak trees my father had cherished. For the first time in weeks, I felt a semblance of peace. When the sheriff's deputy knocked at 7 a.m., Deborah was still in her bathrobe. I observed from the kitchen doorway, as she received the papers, her expression shifting from confusion to shock as she read them. What is this? She demanded, turning to me. A court hearing? Today? To invalidate the trust amendment, I stated calmly, and to address the financial irregularities. Financial? She stopped, her face flushing. This is preposterous. I've done nothing wrong. The hearing is at 10 a.m., I continued as if she hadn't spoken. Judge Thompson's courtroom. You should probably contact your attorney. She stared at me, the papers trembling in her hand. You've been planning this the entire time, pretending everything was fine. Learned from the best, I replied. We arrived at the courthouse separately. Deborah with a hastily assembled legal team from her firm. Me with Arthur Reeves and my mother who sat beside me appearing frail but resolute. Judge Patricia Thompson, a stern woman in her late 50s, wasted no time. This is a hearing to determine the validity of amendments made to the Miller Family Trust, she began. For the next 2 hours, Arthur methodically presented our case. Dr. Carter testified regarding my mother's cognitive state. The forensic accountant detailed the suspicious transfers. Samantha Sterling confirmed the improper notarization. The private investigator presented evidence of the secret apartment and the discrepancies in the assisted living deposit. Throughout, Deborah sat rigidly, whispering frantically to her attorneys. When it was her turn to testify, she attempted to portray herself as a devoted caregiver, stepping in where others wouldn't. I've sacrificed my own career advancement to care for my mother-in-law, she insisted. Every financial decision was made with her best interests at heart. That's when Arthur presented the irrefutable evidence, recorded conversations between Deborah and various real estate developers, discussing development plans for the property once my mother was moved. Judge Thompson's expression hardened as she listened to Deborah's voice, clear and calculating, planning to profit from my family's land. Judge Thompson's ruling was decisive and comprehensive. The court finds clear and convincing evidence that Eleanor Miller was not competent to execute the trust amendment, she declared. Further, there is substantial evidence of undue influence and financial exploitation by Deborah Miller. She ordered the trust restored to its original form, with additional provisions barring Deborah from serving as trustee or beneficiary. All joint accounts were to be dissolved, with funds returned to my mother's sole control. A full forensic audit was ordered to recover every missing dollar. Additionally, Judge Thompson concluded, I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges related to elder financial abuse and fraud. Deborah didn't look at me as she left the courtroom. I didn't watch her go. Instead, I turned to my mother who squeezed my hand with surprising strength. Your father would be proud, she whispered. A week later, I moved my mother into the guest house on our property, a small cottage my father had built years ago as his workshop. I hired a full-time nurse to assist with her care, utilizing funds recovered from Deborah's extravagant spending. The divorce papers were filed the day after the hearing. Deborah didn't contest them. I later learned she'd left Kentucky, heading for Arizona, where her sister resided. The apartment in Lexington was abandoned, the lease forfeited. She'd taken only what she could carry. 2 suitcases. Sometimes in the evenings I still sit on the back porch, watching the oak trees sway in the Kentucky breeze. The land remains in the family name, as my father intended. The trust is secure, with my younger cousin Michael, who recently passed the bar exam, serving as co-trustee alongside me. I don't dwell on Deborah anymore. Some betrayals are too profound for anger to endure. Instead, I concentrate on the positive aspects: morning coffee with my mother, weekend visits from old Army friends, the simple peace of knowing that what was almost lost has been preserved. My father used to say that a man's character isn't revealed by the volume of his protests, but by the wisdom of his actions. In the quiet aftermath of the storm, I finally understand his meaning.